Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers the Fourth Amendment, harboring fugitives, and school searches, and is brought to us by the Denver Post's channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. Before we dive into the interaction, I would like to invite you all to check out the ATA Patreon page where you can find ad-free, uncensored, and exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And right now, we're offering a limited-time 1-year membership with 2 months completely free. On April 24th, 2018, several officers with the Denver Police Department visited Rise Up Community School, which is a charter school with Denver Public Schools, in an attempt to locate a minor student who was a suspect in a shooting that occurred the night before. The officers first approached a student standing outside the school, alleged that someone called to report he was acting suspiciously, and requested the student's ID. The officers then approached 2 male students as they walked back to school, and walked with them back into the school building. Upon entering the school, the officers asked a school staff member if the suspect was in the building, and the staff member advised that he believed the student was present. The officers then spoke with another staff member, who requested that Principal Lucas Ketzer come speak with the officers.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, I'm Lucas.
Sergeant Lucas.
Hey, how are you?
Good. You gotta talk to us. We're pretty sure he's here, but if you get the phone.
Yeah, I'll let that with you, Mark.
Oh yeah, what's going on?
This is a wonderful question. I'll shoot.
Okay, so basically, I can't let you guys come in and pick him from the school. I can let him know that you're here, and then I can ask him if he wants to talk to you. But if he refuses, then I can't go get him and bring him to you. That's not to say that you can't get him after school hours or anything like that, but that's just our policy.
No, understood.
You know what I mean? Like in terms of so I can let him know, and then what I would say to him is, what I'll message to him is, you always going to take care of these things sooner or later. You're just going to be on it.
So you're confirming he's here, but you can't bring him to us? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not confirming or denying he's here. I'm just saying it's our policy that we wouldn't bring a student to you guys. So
He's wanted for attempt homicide last night.
I get it. I mean, trust me, I get it. I'm just saying that, whatever the circumstance, it's always the way that we do it.
Principal Ketzer explains the school's policies regarding police interrogations to the officers, and that school staff members will not deliver students to the police for interrogation against their will. In an interview following the incident, Denver Public Schools spokesperson Alex Renteria told a reporter for the Denver Post that while the police are allowed to enter a classroom without a search warrant, they need approval from a district or school staff member to enter a school unless there's a safety threat. The U.S. Supreme Court found in the 1985 case of New Jersey versus TLO that even though the Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable searches does apply in a school setting, the reasonableness of a search must be determined in light of the diminished expectation of privacy a student has at school. While the TLO decision concludes that school officials only need a reasonable suspicion of a violation of a school rule or law to conduct a search, the law is murkier when police officers are involved rather than school administrators. In the 2005 case of Jones versus Hunt, the Court of Appeals for the Federal 10th Circuit, which includes Colorado, refused to apply the TLO reasonableness standard to a seizure by a deputy sheriff on school grounds. The court concluded that, quote, because the case before us does not involve efforts by school administrators to preserve order on school property, it does not implicate the policy concerns addressed in TLO, and therefore does not merit application of the TLO standard. However, as the court declined to determine which Fourth Amendment standard should apply in the scenario, it is unclear what standard would be applied to a police officer conducting a search or seizure on school grounds. Code JIH of the Denver Public Schools policy on student interviews, interrogations, searches, and arrests states that, quote, upon request by law enforcement to interview a student witness or interrogate a student suspect, school officials shall notify the student's parent/guardian, and that, if the student is under 18, the student's parent or guardian must be present during the law enforcement interrogation or interview, unless the parent waives their right or other exceptions apply. The policy also requires school officials to release students to law enforcement officers if they have been arrested, but does not require that students be released for interrogation, and Principal Ketzer adheres to this policy while interacting with the officers.
Do you have kids?
Yeah, so I'm not going to talk about my kids. I'm not going to talk about the policy.
So if he shot at your kids, though, do you have the same policy?
So I'm just going to say that that's our policy. So you guys,
Could you go
know what I mean?
Come down and talk to us?
Yeah, I mean, I'll see. I don't even know if he's in the building, to be honest with you.
Well, that other teacher pretty much implied that he's here. So
I don't know if he's here. So
I can go with you if you want, but it's
no,
up to
that's
you.
okay. Yeah, I mean, he's not here. I get the position you guys are in. He's not in the building.
I'm on 15 right, head that way as well.
Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
We just need to have the north side.
Is there, like, do you guys have a card so when he shows back up, I can let him know, like, hey, he's
Back
looking
is covered currently,
for
so
you,
you have one
or
working on the back, and you got 2 officers in the front of the Broadway side.
Right, that's what I mean. I mean, and that's the message that we give him too. I mean, it's the message that we always give our students, like, these people are looking for you. Okay?
Principal Ketzer informs the officers that the student they are looking for is not in the building, but requests a business card to provide to the suspect in case he sees him. If the suspect actually was in the building and Principal Ketzer lied to the police, he could potentially face several different criminal charges. Section 18-8-111 of the Colorado Revised Statute states that an individual commits the crime of false reporting to authorities if, quote, he or she makes a report to law enforcement authorities pretending to furnish information relating to an offense or other incident within their official concern when he or she knows that the information is false. It is also possible that Principal Ketzer could be charged as an accessory to crime. Section 18-8-105 of the Colorado Revised Statute states that an individual commits the offense of being an accessory to crime if, quote, with intent to hinder, delay, or prevent the discovery, detection, apprehension, prosecution, conviction, or punishment of another for the commission of a crime, he renders assistance to such person. The definition of rendering assistance includes both harboring or concealing the fugitive, as well as obstructing an individual in the performance of any act which might aid in the discovery, detection, apprehension, prosecution, conviction, or punishment of another by force, intimidation, or deception. While some states prohibit the prosecution of individuals for harboring fugitive family members, there is no such exemption for students and teachers or school administrators. Therefore, if Principal Ketzer was lying to the police, he could be charged with false reporting to authorities. And if a prosecutor believed they could prove he did so to help the student avoid apprehension, he could also be charged as an accessory to crime.
Just so you know, that other teacher
Okay, great.
told me he's here.
Monitoring that. Let's get it rebooted.
And then it was like he realized he made a mistake. Oh, wait, you're not talking to the
That's
side.
40 Adam. Roll call has broke, so you can...
Do we know if there's any other students inside?
I bet they hit him up there in a closet or something until we leave.
Now the principal is denying us access to the school, denying us to look around, and now they're saying he's not here. We believe they're trying to hide him.
I assume you're a teacher?
Yeah, what are you doing?
Do you have access to get back in? Okay, so we may need you.
Please let me in.
Do you want her to go back in?
Nope. They just said not to.
Officer Lucero asked me where he should be.
Yeah.
I just went and took it. He should be in a classroom here. He's not there. So.
On this floor?
Yeah, there's only the 2 floors. So.
Which classroom? I mean, I'm not going to go there yet, but if you don't know, you don't know.
No, I know what class. It's the only class on the right down this hallway. He's
all the way
not
down to
there.
the right? Okay.
Yeah, he's not there. So, all the way down on the right is a workshop.
Like the classroom you're talking about is on the right-hand side?
Yes.
Okay.
674 Adam, we had one adult female teacher come out the back door, and Corporal Warlock is talking to her right now.
So my name is Mike Eaton. I'm the Chief of the Department of Safety for Denver Public Schools.
Okay.
So I oversee all security and police operations for the district. So right now I want to talk to the principal and see if we can get the situation, remedied before we let anybody else.
He's supposed to be in Molly's class.
Okay, so can we just take the officers, just check, because they have to do verification. I have to verify that we don't have an armed suspect. So hold on, what class is he in?
What about these other?
Is he in there? Okay, hold on, or he's supposed to be in there. Okay, do you hold on 1 second?
Yeah.
Before you go in? How do you guys want to do this?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. All right.
After arriving at the school, District Employee Chief Michael Eaton of the Denver Public Schools Department of Safety authorized the officers to search the classroom where the suspect should have been at the time. According to the Denver Public Schools District website, as the leader of the district-wide Department of Safety, Chief Eaton oversees 140 team members, including investigators, armed patrol officers, dispatchers, emergency management professionals, and campus safety officers. The Department of Safety is also responsible for training district staff in emergency management and offering guidance to school administrators to, quote, enhance school safety in a wide variety of situations. While the school district's organizational structure is not publicly available, and the interplay between Chief Eaton's jurisdiction and Principal Ketzer's authority is unclear, it does appear that the Department of Safety, under Chief Eaton's supervision, has the authority to make safety decisions for the school. In her interview with the Denver Post, spokesperson Renteria stated that, quote, "In this situation, the police officers were granted access by our public safety head because there was an imminent threat, as the officers had claimed that the suspect might be armed. As we discussed earlier in this episode, police officers do not need a warrant to search a school classroom, and given the diminished expectation of privacy that students have in the school setting, the safety threat to other students posed by a potentially armed suspect, and the fact that the officers obtained consent from a school district employee with an apparent authority to allow a search of the school grounds, it is highly unlikely that any court would find a search conducted by police officers in this situation to be unconstitutional."
Yeah.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Trying to keep her off the phone.
Well, there's somebody we're looking for. We're gonna just make sure they're not here.
Okay, I'll ask her.
Get a look at your face real quick. All right. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
It's not you, Marquis. It's Mary. It's Mary.
What's that?
He looks a little familiar. There, okay, right there. Look at that picture.
Take off your hat for me, buddy. Stand up for me real quick. Yeah, there's a little resemblance. Yeah, probably. This guy has earrings, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's him.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you, all right? Thanks, guys.
The first teacher that I talked to that said he was here implied that he was upstairs. She said that's because everybody was at lunch upstairs.
Okay.
And no one, several students came down, but I didn't see him come down. So, and then after we talked to the principal, he went straight upstairs.
Okay.
He immediately went upstairs.
Right.
And then came down and said he's not here.
Okay.
So it never had anything to do with the classroom back there. So
Okay.
just for what it's worth, upstairs.
You guys want to check upstairs?
We would like to.
Okay.
Yeah, just to cover that base.
When the student was not found in the classroom that the officers initially searched, the officers searched the entire school, including the classrooms, supply closets, and even the roof. Despite the officers' belief that the school was hiding the suspect, the officers were unable to locate him anywhere in the school. Following the incident, both the Denver Police Department and Denver Public Schools conducted internal reviews of their employees' actions during the encounter, and both investigations found that no wrongdoing occurred, with the exception of one officer who received a minor reprimand for using insulting language about the teachers in a conversation with another officer. It is unclear whether the officers ever apprehended the suspect they were searching for, or if any parties involved will be taking legal action. Overall, the Denver Police Department officers get a B+, because although there were likely more appropriate circumstances to apprehend their suspect under, the officers consulted with the proper supervisory official before moving forward, and were operating under the pretense of a legitimate law enforcement purpose at the time of the encounter. While this interaction does raise many questions about both the ethicality and legality of granting police officers broad authority to conduct searches in schools, the courts have largely failed to acknowledge what role the Fourth Amendment plays in an encounter such as this. Different courts would likely reach varying opinions regarding the legality of this interaction, but there is certainly an argument to be made that the search was completely lawful. From the DPD's perspective, the officers were dealing with a potentially armed suspect inside of a school filled with vulnerable students. If the officers had left the school without searching the building only to have a shooting take place once they're gone, then the narrative surrounding this interaction may have been very different. One of the many challenges facing members of law enforcement is balancing the assessment and response to a potential threat with the appropriate constitutional and ethical boundaries, and officers tend to err on the side of caution when making those determinations. Sometimes, that caution does indeed result in an illegal detention and misconduct, but other times, being overly cautious can save lives without being overtly intrusive. There is no doubt that the officers could have interacted with the students and teachers more professionally, but it appears as though they remained within the bounds of their authority throughout the interaction. While students do deserve to enjoy some level of safety and security while on school property, it cannot serve as a safe haven from the consequences of criminal activity, especially when other students may be at risk. Principal Ketzer gets an A for respecting his students' rights and privacy, rigidly adhering to the school's policy of not surrendering students to the police, and for peacefully complying with the search once it had been authorized by Chief Eaton. Principal Ketzer did everything that was within his power to ensure that the policies of his school were respected, and that his student was treated fairly and appropriately. But once Chief Eaton arrived on the scene, the principal had no choice but to comply with the search. Regardless of whether or not the student that was being searched for was actually in the building, Principal Ketzer's actions would have been appropriate and warranted. warranted. Just as officers are tasked with balancing the constitutional liberties of citizens with their duty to investigate crime, so too are teachers and school administrators tasked with ensuring that their policies are followed and their students are handled accordingly. I commend Principal Ketzer for having the courage to enforce the school's policy and the awareness to understand when to comply with the search. Be sure to give your support to the Denver Post for covering this story. You can find a link to their channel in the description below. Let us know if there's an interaction or legal topic you would like us to discuss in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the ATA Patreon page for more police interaction content.